Recording in progress.
Kayla and Joe, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Hear anything from Caden?
I did not.
Well, we can always start and then.
Yeah. Supposed to be.
We ready?
Yeah, he's just trying to get live stream. It wasn't going.
I think I might have just heard that.
No, that's all right. You made it just in time.
Better be lucky than good. It's a golfer theory.
Right? We got a recording in progress.
All right, James, thank you.
All right, good evening and welcome to the March 21st, 2022 Shakopee Public Utilities Commission meeting. This meeting is being held at the SPU Service Center, and we ask that all participants mute your devices at this time. The public is welcome, and we have an open time slot for the public to address the commission. Ms. Nelson, will you please call the roll?
President Mokel,
Here.
Vice President Fox,
Present.
Commissioner Brennan,
Here.
Commissioner Krieg,
Here.
Commissioner Letourneau.
Here.
All 5 commissioners are present. Thank you.
Great, moving on to item number 2, which is communications. Do any of the commissioners have anything they received or heard that they want to share with the commission? All right, we will move on to number 3, which is our consent agenda. Do any of the commissioners have anything they would like to pull from the consent agenda?
I'd like to quickly comment on 3J. There's a projection in there on the cost, and that projection is right on. And last week we saw a projection that was off by a fair amount, so.
Okay.
Just recognizing staff for getting that one right on.
Yay.
Since we talked a little bit about the other one being a little bit off.
Okay,
And then on 3H and 3I, I had some questions.
okay. We can take 3H and 3I and discuss. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve as amended.
And a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended with 3H and 3I as discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. So we'll start with 3H, which is the resolution 2022-08. Mr. Adams, are you available?
Yes, I am.
All right. And Mr. Krieg, what was your exact question?
I was just wondering, generally for these interconnection agreements, kind of how many people does this apply to? Do we just have solar residential customers on, our system? So I guess that was my first question.
I'll answer that, Joe, because I did grab some numbers here. So currently, in the residential solar program, just to get in perspective, we had 90 in February, but we had 199 in December. So we definitely had an uptick, and we knew we had an uptick in that. We have 5 commercial and 4 industrial customers in that. Between them, they generate about, on our system, about 142,000 kilowatt hours. We've paid out a little over $15,000, under $16,000 last year for this program. So it is a program that's there. It's not a significant amount of money, really, if you look at the grand scheme of things on our wholesale power. But like residential was 121,000 last year, kilowatt hours. Commercial was 7,726, and industrial was 13,336. So overall, not huge numbers, but definitely something that we're monitoring and watching.
And then when on those ones, we're paying them essentially, what, 12 cents kilowatt hour? That average, it's in the, is that, how does that compare to kind of what they're producing in terms of power that we do buy? Just based on timing and.
Yeah, obviously there's different times, right? But during the day, with fuel adjustment, it varies from month to month. So you can't give an exact. But I mean, on an average with demand and energy, it's, we're in that 8 to 8-ish, 7.5 to 8 cents, sometimes 8.5, depending on what the fuel adjustment is. We've had a little uptick in our wholesale power lately, so it's a little bit higher. But it's usually around that 8 cents, 8.5 cents is really all in type of deal. Some of it is on demand, some of it is on energy. So it fluctuates. Some of these, if they're helping our peak demand, obviously then it's that full 8 cents. If it's just kilowatt hours, it's more probably in that 7 cents type of deal.
Okay. So with that average kind of price that we're paying, we're kind of coming out behind on that.
Yeah, and agree 100%. This is state statute. We have to do it. But absolutely, we are losing on a utility. We're losing revenue on every kilowatt hour that we have to pay for that. It is a true statement. Yes.
Okay.
And so from time to time we get these, and then that's why we've talked about some of the pros and cons, why we like our clean energy program. And why we're really this next year focusing on our clean energy program. And we've had 2 large industrial accounts that are signing up for our clean industrial program, which really helps us out because then we don't have that delta where we're really going backwards. So no doubt about it. But as you can see, it's not a big number either, right? I mean, it's 15,000 on what is it, over $30 million in purchase power. So I mean,
We don't have any large cogen systems from any industrial users.
no, we do not. No. I mean, we had some. Joe can answer that a little bit more. We had some way back when we had some cogen where we offered on, we'd call on them, but we don't currently call on any cogen sets.
Even then, they weren't very large, a few hundred kW of capacity.
Yep.
I think those are my only questions.
All right.
Yep.
With that, I'll take a motion to approve the resolution 2022-08.
I motion to approve.
And a second.
I will second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. And then we'll move on to 3I, which is resolution 2022-09 about the small power tariff. Mr. Krieg, or did you?
Any further ones, or just otherwise just approve that one?
I think
Oh, that one too, okay. All right, so I can get a motion to approve 3I.
Motion to approve 3I.
All right, and a second.
Second.
All right, motion to approve the Shakopee Public Utilities Commission's cogeneration and small power tariff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you. So moving on to item 4, which is our liaison report. Ms. Brennan.
Let's see, the City Council approved the final plat of Valley Crest Second Edition, and that is on County Road 83, and that's 36 homes, and that's will be a 3-phase development, so there will be something coming up. And really, I think that's all I have tonight.
All right, Are there any questions for Ms. Brennan?
I do have one more
Okay,
thing.
sure.
Sorry.
Actually, just thought of it.
We approved the Maris Hanson utility reconstruction, and Greg and Joe were at the meeting to answer questions and show their support for that project. So I really appreciate that, and I think that was well taken by the council, and so thank you very much. Even though it passed on consent agenda, they were ready to go to answer any questions.
Better
so-
be prepared.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
All right, good news. All right, moving on to number 5, which is our public comment period. This period provides an opportunity for the public to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda. Comments should not exceed 5 minutes. As president, I may adjust the time limit based on the number of persons seeking to comment. This period may not be used to make personal attacks, to air personality grievances, or political endorsements or campaigns. The public comments are intended for informational purposes only. Commissioners will not enter into a dialogue with commenters, and questions from commissioners will be for clarification only. If any public are present, please step to the table and state your name and address for the record. All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 6, which is our general manager report, and 6A, Mr. Durant.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, we do, just a reminder, first of all, that we do have a joint meeting at 6 PM at City Hall on the 29th. So it's next Tuesday. We're at City Hall. We do have 6 topics that I think are going to be on the agenda unless there's other things on there, just for a quick thing. So we're going to do a quick year in review. We got some service territory, water tower, West End stuff, EV charging network, West End, Force Main, and Maris and Hanson combined project, Canterbury developments, and then downtown street lighting stuff. So those are the topics that we would like to discuss. If there's something else, we can sure add it, but that's kind of where we're at. I have emailed Mr. Reynolds, and he was going to post it in the next day or two as well. So unless something changes on those topics, you can sure let me know. But just excited to have another meeting and just continue the relationship there. Apologize, didn't get the handbook until Thursday this week, so I did have to review it, but I do have it now, so just finalizing that will be on our next one. So we did get it from the attorneys, so we will be just finalizing that and be at our next meeting. We did have a city annual coordination meeting with utilities, so we were at that. We got some developments on the south side of Shakopee as well that they're looking at, so we're continuing to look at make sure that we have water towers and capacity in that area as well. Been working with water department. As you can see, we have a presentation today on a couple different topics there, on some policy manual and backflow. Hanson and Morris was a good project, so we're moving forward on that. We've been starting to work on some County Road 83. That project will be happening, so engineering has been working on some stuff there. Lana's been working on some water engineering services, scheduling meetings for us to look at engineering services. Fiber, which we'll have some discussion on today. A big one that I forgot to mention last time, and Kelly reminded me of that, but we did complete our audit, so that will be coming up and back here. So we did have our exit interview this last week, so it's exciting to get that behind us, and they're working on their final reports and everything on that. So that's a good process. I know it's a very intense process, as everyone knows. Lots of data, and really they did a great job. Jean was here for a couple days because she really was the one that was responsible for that, so she was here as well. But all the information was collected by our staff. Jean was just here to see if there's any questions, more or less. So she worked in another room, was able to conduct most of her business, but if there was questions, she got pulled into meetings. Substation transformer delivery is, they want to get it here sooner, so we'll hear some stuff on that today on control building, but yeah, it's exciting, stressful, because we're going to have to maybe find a spot for it if the site is not quite ready to put it, but on the flip side, I emailed another utility today, and they're at 14 months for their substation transformer and still don't have it. So we're excited that we're going to get it. We're going to get it here early. It may cost us a few $1,000s to plop it next to there on some timbers or something, if maybe the substation site will be ready, and then we'll have to get the crane back in to put it on there. But the flip side is waiting a lot longer, and that's really not an option. Again, we were emails, and I talked to Mr. Kursky a couple times today about projects and things that potentially developments in that area, so we need to be ready. So I think it's money well spent if we have to do that, because we're excited, because they want to get that substation here, and it's looking like the end of September or October. So we're excited about that. Did meet with Prior Lake on service territory. So we did, I met with their city manager with Ryan at MVEC. So we met over there, and we talked about the process, some meetings. They were excited that we were talk to them ahead of time before they start hearing it. They want to get involved in some of the materials that are distributed to their customers. They want to put their flavor on it as well. So that was exciting that they want to be a part of that as well. Where James will be updating a little bit on this contract, and then reminder that next meeting, the SPU officers that will be on the agenda as well. So be thinking about that as well. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Durant? Pretty comprehensive list.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to next week. If there aren't any questions, we'll move on to item 7, which is our water items, and 7A is our systems operation report. Mr. Schemmel.
Thank you very much. Yes, we've finished up that other season. We're putting away the snow plows and getting the blowers put away and switching over to the next season, spring here. We're prepping to start our valve exercising, which is actually the prelude to hydrant flushing. We go out ahead of the flushing crews and make sure all the valves spin very easily, so they can be done by hand. We have a very nice machine that does that. There are still some valve boxes with some ice under the lids, so probably in the next week we'll be able to go full bore. We're also going to start inspecting valve boxes that are on city resurfacing areas, in their project areas. Mainly get a count, with their condition, because every now and then after a paving project or resurfacing, there are less valves when they get done, and we have to go find them. They get paved over, so it's very important. So that's what I have for a report this evening, if there are any questions.
Can we talk about one of the things?
Sure.
Can you just talk about Tank 8 being online?
Oh, absolutely. March 9th, Tank 8 went on, Tank 8 was filled. We had chlorinated it, waiting for bacterial results. It was very, very nice to get that going on the Monday morning. The operator opened the valves. The pressures with Windermere Booster Station were balanced really well. We didn't see any pressure fluctuations that we didn't expect. Day later, we did some pressure testing through the Windermere subdivision. Everything was as was modeled by our engineering firm, SEH, almost 2 years in advance of this. So we've had no calls, no complaints. I'm not even sure people are aware of it, which is what you want, when you bring on a piece of equipment like that, so.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited that this is a big project for the water department, and it's really the future and the growth that we keep hearing about on that west end, and developments happening, and with the substation transformer and now with this water tower, we're really poised as a utility to serve this area and not have any impact to our other customers. So I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. Any other questions for Mr. Schemmel?
I just want to thank Lon Schemmel and his staff for getting that water tower completed
Very
and
welcome.
done.
Thank you.
That's a great addition to our community and the expansion of our community, so thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. That is exciting news. So with that, if there's no other questions, we will move on to 7B, which is our backflow prevention and cross-connection policy presentation and adaptation. Mr. Schemmel.
Yeah, thank you again. Very happy to introduce you to Mr. Tony Myers, our water supervisor in charge of production. He'll be presenting the backflow project. He's been working very hard on this for a couple of months now. Tony oversees our pumpage, storage, and treatment of the system. He's also in charge of installation and replacement of water meters. He has 17 years of experience with the utility. Backflow prevention takes place at or near the water meter on a non-single family customer's service in all irrigation systems. This presentation will describe the most common conditions under which backflow can occur and why it's important to the utility and our customers. Attached is the current policy statement and the requested policy changes to be included in our water policy manual. Staff requests the adoption of the backflow prevention and cross-connection policy after the presentation. Tony?
Thank you, Lon, and thank you, Madam President and Commissioners, for letting me come and present on the backflow prevention and cross-connection policy that you had in your packet. The process of this policy kind of started as we were going through the water policy manual. And as we were doing the review on that, we identified several areas that we thought that might need some more attention and some more detail to it. There's a couple reasons why we thought that. One, the Minnesota Department of Health has indicated that in the near future, they're going to require public water systems to have a cross-connection program that basically meets 5 standards. And those 5 standards are defining who the local authority is for backflow, public education and awareness portion, training and certified staff, which we currently do have 1 certified staff. We're going to be sending 2 other staff members as well through training to be certified. And then written records, which SPU has been doing for years. We've been tracking backflow prevention devices. I'll get to it a little later, but we did switch the method on which we were tracking these devices. And then the last portion that we did not have in the water policy manual was the enforcement piece of it. And so we felt that this wasn't important enough that we should make a separate document, and then this document would meet all the Department of Health's 5 areas that they were requiring for a community backflow policy. So, little background on this document. So it was reviewed internally by SPU staff initially. I did send it over to city staff, Nathan Buska and Tom Pitchnider, to take a look at it and see if they had any comments. Basically, they responded back they had no comments on this. So with that, as I start the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to just ask questions as we go. So the first slide, we're just going to go into the basics. So what is backflow prevention? So you can what is backflow? So you can think of backflow as a normal operating water system where the water comes in from the public water main into the customer's water service line, goes through their water meter and into the building. If a backflow event occurs, what would happen without the proper protection is that water from the building would then go back through the water meter from the customer's building back into the water system. And while the water itself may not be harmful, what we're kind of worried about is something that we call cross connection. And I'll get to that in a few slides, but the next slide that I want to show you is actually an illustration of a water system that does not have any backflow in it. And a couple things to really look at here. So if you can see it on the screen, there's a couple things in the building. One would be the boiler system, and the other would be the lawn irrigation system. So what's happening in this scenario is there's a water main break, and what that water main break is doing is lowering the pressure in the water main. And without the proper backflow, basically all the water that is in those buildings would go back out of the buildings, back into the public water system. And you can see the house on the end. That house kind of gets everybody's water. So it goes into the building, goes through the processes, and then it gets backflowed out of the building into the public water main. The issue with this scenario here, so when you talk about boilers and lawn irrigation systems, boilers contain chemicals in them. So what can happen in a backflow event, if that is not protected properly, the chemicals can actually go back into the water system. With an irrigation system, this is one that not many people think about, but with an irrigation system that isn't properly protected with backflow, people use weed killer, fertilizer. So if a backflow event happens like this water main break that we're seeing in this illustration, the potential of those chemicals going back into the customer's water system and then back into the public water system is a real possibility. So how can we prevent these incidents from happening? The easy answer is to install backflow prevention devices. And on the screen, you see that there's 3 types, very common types of backflow prevention devices. On the far left, it's called an RPZ, or reduced pressure zone. And SPU has required that these be installed on commercial, industrial, as some multifamily residential and commercial lawn irrigation since about the mid-1980s. And basically, we require this device on our water service lines to protect our public water system. If there's something that happens in a building, like we saw the boiler or the lawn irrigation in the last scenario, if this backflow device was on that service line, that would prevent that from getting back into the public water system and then contaminating it. A double check valve, the policy that was for your review, there's a couple areas where this would be used. One, this is typically a device that's used on a fire system. And when I talk about a fire system, it could be a commercial fire system or a residential fire system. And the other area that we see it used, this device can be installed in a single-family home where the property has previously been served by a well. They switched to city water, and they wanted to keep their well in service for outside water use. We require that they put a double check valve in after their water meter on residential applications. So in the event that they go into the house and they cross those two pipes together between the public water system and their well, if there's a backflow event like we've seen in the last slide, that water will not backflow into our system and contaminate it. Really what we're trying to do with all this stuff is protect our water system from things that people do. And then the last one on there is a pressure vacuum breaker. And then some of you guys have probably seen this. You probably might have one on your house. They're used on, mostly you'll see them on residential lawn irrigation systems. And what these do is basically when we talk about that backflow event, this will basically dump that water out if that would happen if this device is working properly. So the next slide I'm going to show that is a water system, same scenario that we had before, but with the proper backflow prevention installed. So what we're seeing here is this isn't exactly how our system is, but it's about the best diagram I could find. The water stays in the building. So that's the main thing. So if the water is going through the boiler, it's going through that lawn irrigation system, there's really no chance of that coming back and contaminating our water system. What we're seeing here is the same water main break. The only backflow that we would get, as you can see, is basically the water that is coming out from the inlet side of that backflow preventer. And we're not too worried about that because that water has not entered their water system and potentially been contaminated. So this is the ideal situation. As you see the single family home, typically, like I said, besides the lawn irrigation and if they keep a private well, single family homes typically do not have backflow prevention in them or it's required. So I talked a little bit too about cross connections. So this is where if you have a backflow scenario and you have a cross connection in a house or a building, this is where we get a little concerned. I talked a little bit about the connection between a well and the municipal water system, but on the bottom right-hand side, there's an illustration, and this is what a cross connection is. So this person decided that they had a 55-barrel drum of, we'll just say that it's fertilizer, that they decided to put a hose into. If this scenario wasn't properly protected by a backflow preventer, what could happen if there's a water main break, a loss of pressure in the water system, is that hose could basically act like a straw, and it would draw all that chemical out of that barrel, go back through the customer's water system, and then back into our water system. It's kind of important to note that there has been two major events in the last 12 years in the metro area with cross connections. The first one was in 2009, and it actually affected a water system of 85,000 people. The second one was in 2011, and that affected 390,000 customers. So these things do happen, and there's also been multiple events that happen on smaller water systems, but those are really the big ones, and they're real close to home. So these things can happen without the proper backflow prevention installed.
Were those residential?
The customers?
The ones you just mentioned?
Yes.
Those are both residential incidents where the
So,
contamination.
yeah, it was actually, I believe the events were on a commercial application where it was just a cross connection between.
Commercial.
Yep. So that's not to say that these couldn't happen on a residential, but the likelihood of this scenario happening would be on a commercial side. So how do we prevent cross connections? Well, we can prevent cross connections by the same way that we prevent backflow, and that's with the installation of backflow assemblies. And on the screen, you'll see on the bottom right-hand side, when I kind of talked about, or I'm sorry, the bottom left-hand side, what I talked about that SPU has required since the 1980s. So you see the blue device on your screen? That's a water meter. So this is actually our building here. I thought that'd be a good way to show that, you know, what is required. So the blue is the water meter, and then just to the left of that, that's the backflow prevention device, or RPZ. So what that device is doing is basically, if we do something in the building that would pollute the internal plumbing system here, there's that backflow prevention device would stop that water from entering the public water system. And what it does is it works off a pressure differential. So if the pressure on the going from back into the meter, if there's a pressure differential there, it will actually dump some of the water out. So if there's chemical or something in there, it will contain that to the building. If you've read through the document, you'll see the word containment, and that's really what we're talking about as far as containment. We're containing that, either that backflow event or that cross connection to that building. It won't get out to the public water system. The second, so that's what SPU requires, and we've required that, like I said, since the 1980s. The second one would be the isolation backflow prevention assembly, and the requirements of these actually come out of the Minnesota State Plumbing Code. This is our pressure washer, actually back in our wash bay, and you can see on the top there's a backflow prevention device up there. That's an RPZ as well. Couple issues with this: if there was something to go wrong inside of that pressure washer, the potential that they could overpressurize the water system here, or the chemical that we inject, which is soap, could get back into the drinking water system of this building. That device is there in place to protect the drinking water system in the building. So if you think of it as containment is protect our system, the isolation is to protect the building water system. So what does this policy intend to do? Really what we wanted to do with this is one, we wanted to make sure that this policy met the potential requirements of the Minnesota Department of Health when they implement the language on those 5 elements that I mentioned. And then just to provide clear guidance for SPU customers, builders, on what we require as far as backflow prevention. That's really what this policy is intended to do, is just give us clear direction. So what is SPU currently doing for backflow prevention? I mentioned several times that we've been doing it since the 1980s, requiring the backflow prevention. We continue to track the testing of these devices because they do have to be tested annually, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So we recently went to a third-party vendor to do that type of tracking for us. We were doing all that tracking in-house. We found it very labor-intensive. And we're actually using a system called the Compliance Engine, and the Shakopee Fire Department, I was talking with Tom Pischneider, and they use it for their fire inspection reports for fire systems. And it's a great system because what that's really allowed us to do is free up some time. We had a person sitting at a computer manually entering these reports. And now, basically, all we have to do is when a report comes through is we have to approve them or deny them. If there's something wrong with the report, we can do that. The Compliance Engine, they will send out letters before these devices are scheduled to be tested, and then if there's overdue devices as well, they will send out the letters. All that stuff we were doing internally before. So this has made our job a little bit easier, and it's also allowed us to do a little bit more with our backflow prevention program. The other thing we are currently doing is, you know, we were trying to develop an educational and awareness program. Ms. Walsh has a mail stuffer going out in the bills for residential to let them know that your pressure vacuum breakers that we saw on a couple slides back there have to be tested annually. So that would be going out. And I think what we're trying to do is try building on that, whether it's through social media, the website, or whatever. But, you know, it's always, when these policies, I think, come out, I think it's always education over enforcement. We need to let these people know that, hey, you have this device. here's what needs to be done, and, you know, work with them to get the testing. And if they don't have a proper backflow prevention device installed, get that installed. So the next slide is what's changed between what we currently do and what we're proposing. So this is going to be the big change is, so in 2015, the plumbing code changed. And it basically said that all those testable backflow prevention devices that I showed you on the screen that were installed after January 23rd of 2016 had to be tested annually. So that includes all the residential pressure vacuum breakers. In talking with other cities that have developed these policies, it's really tough to do to figure out what was installed prior to that date or after that date. And one of the reasons why is if you have a 20-year-old home and your pressure vacuum breaker on your house goes bad and they replace it and they don't pull a permit on it, there's no record that that was ever replaced. So what we're proposing is that we go a little bit above and beyond the code and saying that all testable backflow assemblies have to be tested annually. So it's fair to all the customers, and across the board, it's the same policy. If somebody built a house and they're, you know, last year and their neighbors have lived in a house for 20 years, the requirements are the same for both of them. There's no different in the hazard if the house has been there for 20 years or if it's been there for 2 months. And that's kind of how we thought with the policy that would be a fair way to do it. You know, and really the new policy, it aligns with current codes, the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Department of Health, the new plumbing code, and we just want to be proactive on this. We want to prevent this from potentially from happening in town here. So we always, you know, want to be ahead of it instead of playing catch up on the backside. So with that, that's kind of my quick presentation on it. I think this is always a good saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think that in this situation, in a backflow situation, I think, you know, if you can alleviate or get away from the negative press that something like this would cause, as well as keeping the water system safe, we are doing this. We have a policy in place. You know, I think it's just a good thing for SPU. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Myers from the commission? Yes, Mr. Creed.
So is there a strategy for kind of identifying those older or unpermitted devices? Since we're requiring the testing for all, but we might not know where they are.
Yeah, so we have a pretty good database on a lot of the backflow prevention devices that are out there in the system. The ones that are in the house, the pressure vacuum breakers, we got a couple ideas on how to do that. So with the AMI project that's coming up, we are talking about, so when they go out there, change the meter out, they would also check to see if the house has a backflow prevention assembly. And there'd be certain information that we'd ask them to gather, size, make, model, and then we could input that into our system, the compliance engine, and that would automatically track it. Our hope is that if we can do an educational campaign, that we could actually get it where, you know, some of the people actually have theirs tested, and that would automatically trigger for it to them to enter in the compliance engine. I think I looked, and we really have about, there's probably less than a dozen pressure vacuum breakers in our system right now that have been tested. I did reach out to Nathan Buska at the city and asked him to send me a list of the lawn sprinkler permits, and he sent me a list from the year 2000 forward. There was about 1,400 of them. So we know about 1,400, and my bet is there's probably, I would say, 1.5 to 2 times as many as they have records on. You know, irrigation systems, they might not pull a permit. You just don't know. Some of these go in after the house has been built. So that's our plan is, you know, if we get some more downtime, we may send staff out to, you know, the meter readers are at houses all the time. We could just, hey, they got one here, what's the serial number, and then write it down. So we have a couple plan options on what we could do.
Then are most of these outside?
Yeah, so,
Residential?
yeah, so the residential pressure vacuum breakers would be on the outside of the house. Code says that they have to be 12 inches above the highest sprinkler head. It is possible to have a backflow prevention device in the basement. It's highly unlikely. And that's just a different type of backflow preventer. It's a spill-resistant vacuum breaker in there. But yeah, you have to have it high. So sometimes you'll drive by the houses and you'll see these, they're really high up there, 4 or 5 feet off the ground. So, yeah, the majority of them are, if not all of them, are on the outside of the house.
So for most of them, we'll be able to very easily inspect them on an annual basis. If they're internal, then we have to set up a time with them.
Correct. So the inspection process, I should have been a little more clear on that. So they actually have to hire a certified tester to come out and test their device. So there is going to be some cost to the property owner. So that's one of the biggest challenges is to get this out there, because it is going to cost them to have these tested annually. And then it also, when they enter the reports into the compliance engine, there is also a fee for that. None of that fee goes back to us. That's all for the compliance engine for them to maintain their database and software, et cetera.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Mr.
Do we
Turner?
know what the cost is for a resident?
For testing or,
The whole thing?
I would only be guessing. I'm guessing it's probably going to be, maybe $100 for the testing. The compliance engine, to enter a device in there, it's $15 per address. So, and a lot of the companies are getting really used to entering them into a system. I don't think I've had one yet that has complained about the fee or anything. They've more or less called and asked about how to enter into the system. So really no complaints on that. Now, granted, we haven't had a whole lot of residential ones being entered in. So it is going to be a process.
I guess piggybacking on that, is there a partnership opportunity? It looks like we're going to require the customer to go find their own, but it has to be approved. Do we have an idea of an organization that we work with on those types of things, or?
Yeah, so the certification part, it's basically you have to be certified through the Department of Labor and Industry to test these backflow prevention devices, and then you have to be a licensed plumber and certified to rebuild them. So there are companies in town that do it. So yeah, we typically don't recommend a company to do it, but I think in this instance, if commission was okay, we would probably, come up with a list of vendors and say, we don't have any ties to any of these people, but here's companies that do it, and that's probably not. I seen that on a few websites as I was researching this.
Sure. The local angles, I think, would be good.
Yeah, and there used to be not to get off but on a tangent, but there used to be a plumbing company in town here that was really good on backflow prevention. They would just automatically put it on their calendar and let the customers know, and they were a real help to us. Unfortunately, they've gone out of business. So yeah, I think plumbers realize that it is a requirement and we are enforcing this. I do think that there's probably more of them that will want to, come into Shakopee and test.
And what are we looking at for dates? Because you said annually, what is the start? When is the deadline to get them in?
Yeah, so the plumbing code actually says that you have to have water onto these devices in order to be tested them. So, if they test it in June this year, then they would get a letter like next May saying, hey, just a reminder, your pressure vacuum breaker needs to be tested. They're already sending those out to the commercial customers and industrial customers. So yeah, typically what a lot of cities do is say they got to be tested upon startup of the system. And then after that test is done, the code requires that they give us the paperwork on the test results within 30 days. So they have to enter it into the compliance system within 30 days so we have record of it.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
Go ahead, Jared.
If the breaker is installed 1 year, is there a time that does it automatically kick in every year, or do we know that it's going to be potentially bad after a year, or is there a time frame that we can say in the first 5 years you don't have to do it annually, or?
Yeah, so Commissioner Brennan, that's a good question. So that's kind of where the plumbing code said that any device that was installed after the January 23rd of 2016 had to be tested annually. So that's out of the plumbing code. I've seen backflow prevention devices that have been put in brand new and failed. So they're required to be tested upon installation. So they do need to do an initial test on them, so any brand-new home would do that. And then it's typically a year after that. You know, I'm not sure that we would want to go more lenient than what the code requires. Just because I think you run the risk of, like I said, we've actually seen brand-new backflow prevention assemblies that do fail the test right away because there's maybe something stuck in them, or, you know, there's just a defect with them. So we have seen that.
Okay.
That was my question, so.
Are there any other questions from the commission?
I'll just comment. I mean, we don't take this lightly that we understand that this is an expense and for a residential homeowner, it's not unless they have the irrigation system. So we just, you know, we struggle with the balance with, you know, protecting the system and not being in the paper and making sure that our system is protected the best that it can be. So when Lon and Tony brought this up and we had some internal meetings about it, we think this is the best avenue to protect our system and to make sure we don't hit that paper with something bad happening. So that's why we decided to bring this out. If you want us to investigate partnerships and try to see if we can get some discounted rates or do some things like that, we can sure do that, but we really think this is the best way to protect our system. So today we're asking to approve the policy, and then we'll start implementing it. And obviously, we won't know what's all on our system. So, I mean, I really do think that this is an education for us in the next year or two to get them on our system and make sure that when AMI happens that we can inventory them, and then will really take place after we got an inventory of all of our stuff. The other thing we could do is if you want, we could send letters out this year that stating that next year in 2023, this will be in place. That would be another option that we could do, that we're implementing a program, we're setting the groundwork, and hey, just so you know, next year, by next year, 1 year from today, you need that inspected. I think that would be also another compromise that could be considered, but we do want to start making sure our system is protected.
Can I ask, since it was implemented in 2016, would we be under any obligation to say, you know, give it a year since it's already kind of required?
So this requirement, when it came out in the plumbing code, I will say this, a lot of cities did not know what to do when this came out, because it does take staff, it does take time, and a lot of cities don't have that to, you know, have the time to track these. So I don't know. Right now, you know, I think we're moving forward to get this in place. I don't know that it would be a big issue. What I would recommend, though, is that all new ones that need to be installed, and I can definitely work with Nathan and the building department to get those tested, because at least then they are in our system. You know, whether we, you know, I think, like I said earlier, I think a big part of this is education over enforcement. I think we just need to educate people and let them know what the requirements are. I mean, we're not gonna, we do have some language in there, or if you don't do it, then this. But I think that if we can educate them and just explain to why they need to have this done.
Okay. So what is the thoughts of the commission? Ms. Brennan?
Well, I'll make a motion to adopt the backflow prevention and cross-connection policy with the requirement of having annual testing for beginning in 2023.
Okay. And a motion and a second. Are there any other comments or questions in regards to the motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if we want to do partnerships. I mean, it'd be great if we could get a discount or something, but then that comes with some kind of culpability or liability there. But yeah, at least giving a list of companies in Shakopee that do this would be great.
I think so. I think we'll look at that, and we'll look at if there's one of them that makes sense. As long as we don't, you know, if we just give a list, and if somebody requests to be on the list, we can definitely do that, right? We can make a list, and then if somebody says, why am I not on the list? Well, ask to be on the list, you'll be on the list. I don't think we can stop people from being on the list, but absolutely, we can talk to some local plumbers and get that list. And if somebody from, for example, Burnsville wants to be on the list, we'll probably have to add them to the list type of deal, but we can start with making a list, and if somebody wants to get on the list, we can just say, hey, we know these people can do it the right way, so.
I mean, we could also organize that list by Shakopee people first, and then
Yeah.
you're from
Absolutely.
Burnsville, you're
Yeah.
just
Yep.
at the bottom of the list.
Yep.
You can be on it, but you're just gonna be at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I think as far as discounts, I think if you look at homeowners associations or even your neighborhoods, you probably could get some people together to do that. People do it for their driveways and other things that they have done, so that's my thought.
Yeah, and some lawn irrigation contractors as well are certified to do it. So
Okay.
that's usually the ones that we see getting done. So if they know, they might be more inclined to, if they have a bunch of clients here in town, to get certified to do it. And, you know,
So they could do that like when, in the fall when they blow the system out then, I guess, right?
typically, no, so it's typically done on startup. So you want the backflow prevention device to ensure that it's working while the system's in service. So it's usually when the water gets turned on in the spring.
In the spring, okay.
Yeah.
All right. With that, there's a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Myers.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Schemmel.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Moving on to number 8, which is our electric systems operation report. Mr. Carlson.
Thank you, Commissioners. No outages to report from our last meet. A few of the projects working on. Last week, electric department was busy with customer disconnects. Everything went well with those. And crews continue to tree trim in the city of Shakopee, and as well as clean up projects from winter construction. We did have one shutdown from last meeting. We had an outage, 850 Marshall Road, 1245 Shakopee Avenue. We shut down a couple apartment complexes to repair some issues we were having that was fault of the outage from prior weeks. DOT inspections, aerial lift inspections are completed for the electric and water fleet. Individuals from the electric department are preparing to travel to Austin, Texas for the APPA Line Workers Rodeo coming up this weekend. We have 2 journeyman teams and 2 apprentices competing in the national conference. Line Workers Rodeo, so excited to go out and see them, maybe bring home a big trophy for City of Shakopee. And then as well, electric department has filled a budgeted apprentice line worker position. Ellie Seaver will be starting the first week of April. Kind of excited to get her going. It'll be a very busy summer, and she will be the first female line worker here at Shakopee. So
Awesome.
that's all I have for my report this week. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Carlson? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very exciting news. All right, moving on to 8B, which is our West Shakopee Substation 15 kV switchgear and control building bid award. Mr. Adams, did we lose him?
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
Just
Our-
keeping the video off because the bandwidth isn't the same as being in the office, so.
Well, our screen turned blue, so I thought
Oh.
I'd start thinking I lost you. All right.
Okay, the West Shakopee Substation 15 kV switchgear and control building bids were opened last week, and Kevin Fabro from Lados Engineering is here to do a presentation on his analysis of the bids. So I will turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Joe. Madam President, Commissioners,
Kevin, are you going to want to show something?
well,
Or just
I had previously sent out a summary letter.
Yeah, I think the summary, just talk about the summary letter is all. That's-
Okay,
That's
do I
good. That's good.
I don't know if we need to show that or not.
We do not.
Okay. Okay, in the letter, I describe how the bids were received. There were 3 bidders. One was M&I Electric, which is also known as Myers Power Products, one from Siemens Industry, and one from States Manufacturing. We did an economic analysis based on the bids. There were some adjustments needed because a couple of the bidders had failed to include some of the items that were required by the bid documents and specs. The main items that were missing was there was a thin brick exterior that's required on the building. This is based on a requirement from the city that does not like having metal-sided buildings. So SPU built a similar switchgear building, the one known as Pike Lake Substation, and that one incidentally is just outside of the corporate limits. It's in Prior Lake, and at that time, Prior Lake also required some decorative covering of the building. So Shakopee, the spec for that one included this thin brick. Now, thin brick is used because, as its name implies, it's not a full-size brick, but it's I think like quarter-inch thick brick, so that it gives the appearance of brick, and but it's a lot. The weight is a lot less, so it's not structurally, and the brick is fastened to the building with screws rather than with the normal, if it was a full brick, requiring more of a foundational installation. One of the bids also did not include offloading the switchgear from the delivery vehicle. The offloading also was required by the specifications, and that interjects another area of risk for SPU and the SPU contractor to make sure that the building would be offloaded safely onto the concrete foundation. So with those adjustments, the range of bids was roughly $1.3 million to $1.8 million. The lowest, $1.3 million, was non-responsive because the delivery date was in January of 2024, which would be after the peak of 2023. As Greg mentioned earlier, there's a significant amount of expected load growth, and this substation will be needed for the peak of 2023. So the lowest responsive bid, which would be delivered by 15 days after the termination of road restrictions in spring of 2023, was by States Manufacturing, which was $1.5 million. And the next lowest bid was by Siemens, and their bid was approximately $170,000 higher, and also they also would be able to deliver either by the end of January of 2023 or May of 2023. So based on that economic evaluation, we're recommending States Manufacturing. States has also prepared or delivered to SPU several switchgear buildings that were at Shakopee Substation, South Shakopee Substation, 2 at Dean Lake Substation, and the 1 at Pike Lake Substation. And those are all working well and as intended by design. We noted that there was some wiring issues in a previous installation, and we had discussions with States with some approaches to make sure that doesn't happen again, having the switchgear assembly fully tested with reports on all the circuits that are tested, and having the delivery, having the switchgear ready at the beginning of April, first week of April, so that as soon as the road restrictions are lifted, the delivery can occur very quickly. States is a Minneapolis-based contractor, so the delivery can be really within one day once they're ready to do the shipment. And at that time, as I discussed with their manager, their president, they certainly will be very interested in getting the equipment shipped as soon as possible so they can free up space in their manufacturing plant. So there's no issue with that. So based on those factors, we recommended that the the award go to states for the $1,533,000 for the delivery within 5 days after removal of road restrictions in spring of 2023. As I also mentioned in the report, the other bidders, one of the major exceptions that they had taken was they did not include a 5-year warranty that was in the bid specifications. Both of them had 12-month after shipment, and, well, one of them had kind of reversed, but it's typically 18 months after shipment or 1 year after commissioning, whichever is first. So for those reasons, we, as I mentioned, recommended the award to States Manufacturing. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for the commission?
I just have one. We did verify that states intended the 5-year warranty. given the
Yes,
other
there were
two.
no exceptions were taken in their bid.
There's just, the other two seemed to have a similar warranty, so it's interesting that they didn't have kind of that same.
We have an area in the bid documents for that the contract or the bidder is supposed to list exceptions, and so both of them had those items listed in the exceptions, where states did not take any exceptions.
We don't think that's an oversight on their part.
No, they've had the 5-year warranty in all previous
Okay.
contracts as well. Yeah.
And we didn't specifically ask about that question, but we did specifically ask because they were here at the bid opening, which anybody can be at, and we specifically asked, was there any exceptions? And he said, no, they meet all the requirements.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the state's manufacturing bid.
Motion to award the bid to States Manufacturing.
I have a motion and a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Letourneau. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Lito.
Thank you.
Moving on, item number 9 is human resources, which we have none. So moving on to item 10, general reports, and 10A is our marketing customer service report. Ms. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. I have a fairly short update tonight. The master agreement for AMI is in its final review with legal, and that is the last piece of the bid package, and then we'll be going out. Greg and I have a meeting with Imagine Print Solutions on Wednesday. This started out as an LED rebate type meeting, but we were able to secure a meeting with a higher level, their VP of Technology. So we're going in to do more of a true key accounts meeting and talk about their needs and how we can better serve them and just understand what they need from us. We have secured a date for the ribbon cutting for the drive-up. That will be on Tuesday, April 12th at 9 a.m. We'll have coffee and donuts prior to the ribbon cutting here in the commission room, and then everyone can get on with their day following the ribbon cutting. You would see very soon some unique photos for the Lineman's Rodeo. We're going to try and promote that and put some fun things out on social media to get customer interest. And then also, interviews have been held for article content development for our year in review that will be coming out in April. And then lastly, I just wanted to add to piggyback on the backflow prevention. If you were to go out to our website and go under residential water service information, the very top article will be about backflow, and then you can click on that and go into more detail and FAQ section. So we're ready to go when that insert hits. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
I have one more thing.
Yes.
Because I forgot, and I'm going to get in trouble again. Our drive-up did open today. So we did open our drive-up today. We're having a more grand opening a little later on with the ribbon cutting and some of that other stuff, and we will definitely post that. But it was the first day that we're still waiting on our sign. Again, it's all with things take longer than what we want. It's been ordered. They were having some color problems, so that will direct people that way, but we did open. We're having a soft opening and then more of a little formal opening later on.
Did we have a user today?
I, that's not Bill
I say other than me.
SPU employee drive through their car, so it was a little fun. All right, and Mr. Latour.
Is the backflow insert going to all customers?
To residential only.
All resident, but all residential?
Correct.
Okay.
And how do you do that, Sharon, if they don't get their bill? It's online.
On our billing stub, it says, please refer to the website.
All right, are there any other questions for Ms. Walsh?
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. All right, moving on to 10B, which is our IT projects update. Mr. Kelchin, new to our,
Pronounce that properly even.
I had to ask you, that's why.
It's
so.
okay. I'll wait till Denise flips over to from the other side.
Hold on, I'm coming. Are you showing something? Your memo?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
It's all good.
Oh, wrong one. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. There you go.
Hey, there we go. Technology issues, right? This is what we get to deal with. Greg thought it a good idea for me to throw together just a little intro slide, introduce myself. Again, my name is James Kelchin. I've got 20-plus years in IT. This wonderful photo is back when I had more hair before I really got started, I guess, might be the answer. And I previously had worked for Owatonna Public Utilities for about a decade. So I have a lot of experience in IT security. That's primarily what my background is. That's what I teach at South Central College. I teach IT security courses and networking courses. A lot of experience with different SCADA systems, ICS, project management, AMI, you name it. So I've been doing this for quite a while. But beyond that wonderful photo, the piece that you guys are actually more interested in are some of our various projects that we have going on. So the first one is actually our NISC project, which is our customer information system and finance system. And ultimately, I had previously done this for Owatonna Public Utilities in the past, and the NISC system is head and shoulders above most. So when you guys selected NISC, it was a good choice because realistically, it's gonna help you engage with your customers a lot better. So it's a fantastic piece. I grabbed and threw together a quick timeline. Let's see if this actually shows properly. This was our initial draft of the timeline before everything really kind of shook out as far as getting the agreement from legal, getting the agreement from you guys, and so on. So this is just kind of putting together a few of those key dates that we had initially are essentially shooting for. The biggest piece is if you look kind of where we're at right now, we're supposed to get that initial data set to NISC, which is going to engage us in working with our current vendor, and Kelly gets to deal with that one, working with our current vendor to get the data out in a format that NISC wants and doing multiple pulls of that information so that ultimately when we do make that cutover, we're comparing apples to apples. We're able to make a pretty seamless cut. Some of the other pieces that you'll see inside here, we're going to be doing business process review, which is again something that kind of affects just about everybody in the company. And that's just, it might sound really simple, but what happens when a customer first walks in? What's the first thing they do? How do they pay their bill? Do they have an online account? Do we ask them if they have an online account? We get their email address, things along those lines. It's really reviewing every step of the way from those customer touch points. So it's a really key piece to be done, and thankfully we have quite a bit of documentation on that already. So it's a good piece, so we'll be able to move through that business process review relatively easily and kind of focus more on the conversion. The conversion itself is a big piece because also built into that is actually training. So we may convert the first couple sets of data, kind of get it within the NISC system, and then we get trained on it, how to use it, how to navigate through the system. So we're looking at our data, not the sample data with, you know, Mickey Mouse and Fred Astaire and stuff like that. We're actually looking at our actual customers, our customers' usage, things along those lines. So right now, just my own gut reaction, when I did this in Owatonna, that was almost a year process. So we're condensing that a lot. So we'll see how this goes and where things kind of shake out a little bit. NISC kind of has multiple modules. So the first piece is that blue area, which is actually the financials data. So that's your GL, your AR, things along those lines. That traditionally comes first, and then kind of simultaneously comes that customer information, the customer information system. That's your billing, your customer demographics, things along those lines. Finance usually comes first, and then customer billing comes in next. So this is all with kind of that anticipated go live with each and everything of kind of end of February is what we're targeting. Again, this is put together prior to doing it, so we'll see how things shake out a little bit. But ultimately, this project is a pretty key piece for the utility, and it will affect everyone. It'll actually affect you guys too, because part of the NISC system, of course, is another subsystem for getting board minutes and board packets and meetings and things along those lines. So that's another function of it. So that's one project that I wanted to highlight for you guys. Another project in this case is we flipped over to Office 365, which we did the email conversion already. We're working through some of the other pieces, which is actually the Intune enrollment, which is computer management, and eventually getting to that Teams implementation kind of mid-April. One of the first things, I've only been here 2.5 months, and they're already converting email systems. One of the first things I noticed was, man, we were spending a lot of time dealing with mail servers and maintaining those pieces. So the flip over to this was a substantial decrease. And decrease as far as when I refer to that as like hands-on, trying to manage things, monitor different systems, keeping patches on systems, things along those lines. And we're gonna just keep using this more and more and more. You'll see that obviously we flipped your guys' email accounts too. So it's a whole nother piece to it. And one of the other projects that we're working on right now, this is kind of a cooperative project with Scott County, is a fiber optic ring that we're planning to build between our substations and water stations. The whole idea behind this particular project is to create redundant loops such that in the event a fiber cut occurs, the traffic essentially routes back the other direction through the ring. We are now just at the point of really kind of getting this location inventory really nailed down, and then trying to find the available paths. So Scott County has a fantastic fiber system kind of laid out throughout the community. We're looking at potentially leasing individual strands so that we can use that to help build this, and ultimately we will have to do some construction anyways to build out laterals to some of these spots. The first initial piece though, which is kind of not on here, is this building. So right as it sits right now, we have no connectivity to Scott County fiber. So the very first one we have to do is to reach that. Thankfully, it goes right up Saracen Street here, so we have to get some fiber into this building and do some fiber splicing. So those are some of the big projects that are going on. In between all the other stuff, which is, as I'm finding out, there's all kinds of stuff to do with the infrastructure, YouTube streams, Zoom meetings, all kinds of stuff. So just wanted to highlight a few of those for you guys, just so you have a good idea about them. And last but not least is cybersecurity. So part of my background is actually dealing in cybersecurity. I dealt with it at kind of the Department of Homeland Security level, CISA. And of course, we're in a wonderful spot right now because as of about 10 minutes ago, I received another email from our Water ISAC group, actually, requesting, President Biden has asked everybody to request and kind of follow these particular mandates, which is two-factor authentication. That's that text or voice to, or hardware keys, and a number of essentially testing out your backup strategies. One of the recommendations was to buy Bitcoin in the event that we do get some kind of ransomware. I don't know if I agree with that necessarily, but it is what it is. And on top of that, we also just had a customer email us asking what we're doing. So I've reached out to them to say I'd love to have a conversation with you guys about this because, yeah, there's quite a bit of stuff. Go ahead.
The Biden administration actually, as a matter of policy, suggested municipal utilities buy Bitcoin for ransomware attacks?
It's one of the recommendations from the FBI, which I think is kind of counterintuitive to what they offer.
Well,
Because-
yeah, like, don't negotiate with terrorists, but yeah, load up on Bitcoin and pay out quick.
Yeah, makes me wonder if they actually have the Bitcoin and they're actually trying to.
Well, it's a smart idea, because, I mean, if it's only gonna go up from here, then.
It's basically it's a risk. So you look at it from evaluating it from a risk standpoint. So, again, don't necessarily agree with it. Again, we're testing out most of our backup schemes and things along those lines too. So the whole idea is that in the event that we do have it, we can just recover rather than having to go that route. Because yeah, I don't like negotiating with terrorists as much as the next person. We do have a firewall replacement in place, and so we're going to be looking at building out our network segments to separate them a little bit further. Predominantly, most of our computers were at one time just part of the computers network, we're part of the printers network, they're all together. So we're looking at breaking most of these out. So it's just a good practice to do. So, and then also retiring a lot of systems. One of the things I did when I first started was actually do a vulnerability assessment across all the computers that we have here. And we found a lot of old computers that were essentially kind of sitting, running behind somebody's drawer or a file cabinet that performed some task and they hadn't been patched. So looking at that and trying to reduce those, retire those systems that we need and things along those lines. So just a good practice to do. We do that now on a monthly basis. So we've started kind of establishing that cybersecurity baseline and are looking at ramping it up really, really quick. So, but those are some of the projects that I guess I had. Just again, it's an opportunity to get to know you guys. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.
I do have a question in regards to cybersecurity. Do we here at the utility worry about the insurability of the utility with regard to cybersecurity? Because I know the two-factor authentication is a huge part of that right now. Because, I mean, what are they doubling, tripling, 5 times, 10 times now? And even people without any losses are seeing that?
That's correct.
So how does
yeah.
that affect us?
The cyber liability insurance, so the League of Minnesota Cities already has a
Okay.
cyber liability insurance, which will cover some things, but essentially, like you mentioned, if you don't have some of those other factors or kind of risk reduction strategies in place, they may deny your claim. So those are some of the pieces that we're changing really fast.
Okay.
Yeah, I know we did ask the League of Minnesota Cities about that, so we do have some background on that and how much they would cover, so we do have some coverage that way as well, so.
All right, Jody?
The city is currently looking at rebuilding the lift station down by the river here, and they're also looking at the fiber ring in that area. Are we looking at any partnerships financially that we can tap into, and can it be done more economically if it's two entities doing it at once with
I'm
Scott
gonna let Greg
County?
answer that one.
Yeah, we can definitely look at it. So some of the challenges that we've had is Scott County, a few years ago, was a service to any government entities could use Scott County for free of charge. They since have had a maintenance agreement that you have to, and you have to actually pay to get on the system now. They're being a little more robust about it. The challenge is we're gonna have to pay that, and currently I don't think the city has to pay that. So I don't wanna get into something that now the city all of a sudden has to pay because they're upgrading something, but we can look at it to make sure, but we're definitely gonna have to pay to be on the Scott County fiber system. We did an analysis on it. It is still cheaper to be on the system. Once we get there, we can get cheaper rates. So it balances out for us that it's not gonna cost us a whole bunch of money to be on there. But we are gonna have to pay, where currently the city and the school districts, I don't think, have to pay to be on the system. So that's gonna be the challenge.
So if we have to pay to build it out, could we then lease it to other parties that were interested?
I think, no. I don't believe that's the way the lease agreement is, but I mean, we can look on that. We're having legal look at that agreement right now and understanding it a little bit better. But that's why this process has taken a little while longer, because I've been a little sticky on, I don't think we should have to pay, because we are quasi-government, and you know, I struggle with having to pay a fee when others don't have to. So, but they are saying all new and updated things, they're starting to charge to be on that, because they do have bills and they gotta pay to upgrade it and add new fiber and stuff like that, but they also get some grants and stuff like that that we feel it's a little bit different, and so that's why this process has taken a little while longer, because we've had several conversations with them, not agreeing with the philosophy. But if it's saving us money at the long run, I've come to the agreement that let's just do it, because I don't want to not do something just because it costs us a little bit of money, right? It's more important that we have good, robust fiber system into this building. We've seen that many times when we first started this, and James has talked to me about, Greg, we need to increase speeds, we get this delay and different things like that, because we just don't have enough bandwidth here, and that's the best way for us to do it. And once we hit that 511 building, we can get better rates, so.
Kind of a crazy question, but we're Shakopee Public Utilities. So it's not necessarily limited to power and water. Could we go on to like municipal broadband and just build out fiber and offer that as a service?
We sure could, but that's a lot of additional staff.
Well, yeah. But
No,
if
I
we're
mean,
gonna
I'm
be
just saying.
building out fiber.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, in Lee Sewer, we built some fiber and then we rented it back to some companies, and I don't mind the concept. It's just everything we got going is the bandwidth for us to try to take on, and where do you start and who do you get to partner with. I would tell you that we did put an extra conduit underneath when we were building out of the South Shakopee substation across the wetland in that, because we feel that that's a good spot for us to be, you know, if they can't get right by Stonebrook Golf Course, if they can't get to us there, we ran an extra conduit to the next county road to the, get the directions wrong, to the west, west underneath the 169, and we know that they're out there. So we do planning of our own system, like, okay, how do we get to this building? And we try to do that. We're using some duct work to get to our by RAR multi, and that's another difficult spot for Scott County Fiber System. So we have a way you get through our duct work to get something a little closer to the old City Hall building, and then we can connect there. So we try to do some of those things, and but absolutely we can. I just don't think we have the bandwidth without hiring more people.
Oh, it would definitely be like a big expansion.
Right.
But I mean, is it something that makes sense if we're already in the ground putting pipes and wires there to begin with?
Yeah, it's just a matter of what business that we want to be in.
That's like a
right?
10, 15-year plan,
Right.
thing, not
Yeah.
next week.
So I mean, we could think about it, but yeah, I mean, that's the challenges that we have. So we've tried to buffer ourselves as much as we can to save money going forward, and we'll need to continue. I mean, we looked at, does it make sense for us to get to City Hall from here, and then just because they're on the system for free, like, okay, let's get to there, we're fairly close, then we wouldn't have to pay to be on it. But it really doesn't help us for our substations and our water towers and our lift stations. And then does it make sense, because we would have a radio feed where if we get on the Scott County Fiber System here, we'd plan on putting a dual feed in here, so we're in the ring type of deal, so we don't have those exposures. So those are the things we've looked at.
I mean, because it makes it like with 494, 694, just having a dual redundant loop around the city of the perimeter would make us valuable to businesses too.
Yeah, so, yep, so no, we'll continue to do what we can, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
All right, are there any other comments or questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to item number 12, which is our future agenda items. Is there anything the commission would like brought back that they haven't seen? All right. Our next meeting is next Tuesday, the 29th, at 7 p.m.? 6 p.m.
6 p.m.,
at
correct.
Shakopee City Hall.
Correct.
So with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn until our oddball meeting with the city.
And a second? All right, a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone.